The land where time stood still. There was once a monarch called the Red King. He found that food disappeared from a closet, even though it was locked and guards were placed upon it through the night. The food simply was not there in the morning. He made a proclamation. "I will give half my kingdom to anyone who can so guard this closet that the food shall not vanish from it." Now the king had 3 sons. The eldest thought to himself, "Half the kingdom should not go to a stranger who might answer this plea. It would be best for me to keep watch." He went to his father and offered to stay up on guard. The king said, "As you may wish, but do not be frightened by anything you may see." The prince went to the closet and lay down to stay beside it for the night. But as soon as he put his head on the pillow, he fell asleep, and stayed asleep until dawn, for a warm, sleepy breeze arose and lulled him into a deep slumber. While he was asleep, his small sister, only a tiny child, got up and turned a somersault. Instantly her nails became like an axe and her teeth like a shovel. She opened the closet and devoured everything in it. Then she reverted to the appearance of an ordinary small child and returned to her cradle. For she was in fact both a witch and a babe unweaned. The prince got up in the morning and told his father that he had seen nothing. The king went to the closet and found it completely bare. Everything was gone. He said to his son, "It would take a better man than you to solve this. Even he might be able to do nothing." Then the middle son said to the king, "Father, I shall keep watch tonight." The king agreed, warning him to be brave. The second son lay down beside the closet in the palace. At 10 o'clock the warm breeze came and cast him into a deep sleep. The tiny princess, who was a witch, arose from her cradle and unwrapped herself from her swaddling clothes. She turned a somersault, and her nails and teeth were transformed as before. Again she went to the closet and opened it and ate up all the food which it contained. And as before, she rotated herself and went back to her usual place in the cradle. When day broke, the young prince went to his father to confess that he had seen and heard nothing, and the king told him that it would take a better man than he to unravel the mystery. It was now the turn of the youngest prince, and he asked, and was given, permission by the king to watch the closet that night. This young man, however, did not at once lay himself down to rest like his brothers. He took 4 needles and stuck them in 4 places. When he began to feel tired, he pricked himself with a needle, and so he stayed awake until 10 o'clock. When the tiny witch rose from her cradle, her brother saw her. He watched while she turned a somersault, and as her nails and teeth became transformed, and as she devoured the food, and when she returned to her cradle. The prince was terrified. He trembled with fear, and it seemed to him, as he lay quietly there, that 10 years passed before the dawn. When it was light, his father sought him out and said, "Did you see anything?" "What did I see? What did I not see?" answered the youth, and he would say no more about his terrible experience. He asked the king to give him some money and a horse and to let him travel, for he had decided to go away and get married. His father gave him 2 sacks of money and a horse, and he went to the outskirts of the city and dug a hole. He left the coins buried there in a stone box, and put a stone cross on top to mark the place. Then he set off on his travels. He journeyed for 8 years, and then he came to the place of the queen of all the birds that fly. She asked him, "Where are you going?" He said, "I am going yonder, where there is neither death nor old age, to get married." The queen said to him, "There is neither death nor old age here." The prince asked her how that was. The queen said, Death and old age will not come to take me away until I have broken the last twig of this huge forest." But the prince realized that that time would in fact come one day, and so he started off again on his way. After another 8 years, he arrived at a palace of copper. Out of it came a maiden who took him in her arms and kissed him. She said, "I have waited a very long time for you." She took the prince and the horse in her charge, and he spent the night there. In the morning he placed the saddle on his horse. Then the maiden began to weep and asked, "Where are you going?" "I am going further, to where there is neither death nor old age." She told him that there was neither of those things where they now were, and the prince asked her how that could be. "Death will not come here until these mountains are leveled and these forests have disappeared." "That is not good enough for me," he said, and he went on his way. Now of all things, his horse said to him, "Master, whip me 4 times and yourself twice, for you have come to the plain of regret. And regret can seize you and throw you down, horse and all. So spur your horse and escape, and do not linger here." He did as he was told, and crossed the plain of regret, and then came to a hut. A lad came out and asked, "Where are you going, and what do you want?" The prince told him of his quest. The lad said, "There is neither death nor old age here, for I am the wind." At last the prince thought he could rest. He stayed there for 100 years, and he did not age at all. He used to go hunting, and always found so much game that he could hardly carry it home. The wind had said to him, "Go, by all means, into the mountains of gold and the mountains of silver, but do not go into the mountain of regret or to the valley of grief." But one day the prince did go to the mountain of regret and into the valley of grief. And that was how grief cast him down until his eyes were full of tears. He remembered his home and went to the wind in sadness, saying, "I am going home to my father, for I cannot stay here any longer." The wind told him, "Do not go, for your father is dead, and you have no brothers either. 1,000,000 years have come and gone since the times you recall at the palace. Even the place where the building stood is not remembered. Melons have been planted on it, I know, for I passed that way no more than an hour ago." But the prince took no notice of the wind and started on his way back to his home. As he arrived at the palace of copper, he saw that the mountains were flat, and that the maiden had cut the last stick of the forest, and that she had died. He buried her and continued his journey. Presently he came to the queen of all the birds that fly. When she saw him, she said, "You are still young." Then she broke through the very last branch in her forest, and she fell and died. At long last the prince came to the place where his father's palace had stood, and looked around him. It was practically a wilderness. All he could see as he exclaimed, "God, thou art wonderful," was the well of his father. He went towards it, and suddenly his sister, the witch, rushed at him, crying, "I have waited long for you, dog." She was trying to devour him when he made the sign of the cross at her, and she perished. As he was walking away from the place, he came across an old man with a beard down to his belt. He said, "Father, where is the palace of the Red King? I am his son."
"What is that you say, my child?" asked the Ancient One. "You say that you are his son? My grandfather told me about the Red King, but his palace is gone, his very city has vanished timeless ages ago, and you say that you are his son?"
"It is not 20 years, old man," said the prince, "that I left my father's presence. Follow me if you do not believe me." In fact, it was 1,000,000 years that had passed. The prince found the cross of stone, now almost completely covered with earth. He struggled for 2 days to get to the stone box with the money in it. When he lifted the box and opened it, Death sat in one of the corners, and Old Age in another. Old Age said, "Seize him, Death." Death said, "Get him yourself." Old Age took him in front, and Death from behind, and so he died. The old man took him and gave him a decent burial, and then took for himself the money and the horse.